What is going on, Junkie Nation? Gorgeous George and Goes are back with another superstar from the world of combat sports. He is a former UFC middleweight champion. He's a UFC Hall of Famer and now an exec for One Championship. Don't forget, One Championship coming your way. Cinco de Mayo, baby. It's this Friday with arguably the greatest of all time, Demetrious Johnson versus Adriano Moraes at the top of the bill. If you are one of the 210 Amazon Prime subscribers, you need to get it because it's free and it's going to be a lot of action. Rich, welcome back to Junkie Radio. How are you, sir?
Always good to be back here with you guys.
Thank you.
Yep, and we love having you on the show. We get to talk about some old stories, a current card, all your travels. Well, you had quite a venture just getting here. So you just flew in from Singapore, I take it?
It was Bangkok. The event was the last event was in Bangkok. Okay. A week and a half ago or whatever. And yeah, so it was actually on my way out there. And I'd minimized my time on ground. So I was only actually in Bangkok for 4.5 days because that's all I needed to be there for the event because we had this event coming up this coming Friday, December 5th. And so on my way out there, I missed my connection. I only had an hour and 5-minute connection in Istanbul Airport. And if you've ever been to Istanbul Airport, then it is the size of, it's its own city. Like it probably has its own municipal police or something. But I missed that connection and that gave me a 10-hour layover. So door to door, from my front door to my hotel room door was 41 and a half hours. And
jeez.
Yeah, it's like that's and then because I got there later, instead of being on the ground 4.5 days, I'm only there for like 4 days, and then 4 days later I'm back on a plane and it's 33 hours back home again. So, over like a 5-day period, I had flown like 70 plus, almost 80 hours.
So who was the turkey that made this 1 hour delay here in Istanbul that cut it so close?
It's funny that you say that. It's actually Turkish Airlines.
Oh,
that's the turkey that did it. Yeah. Now,
okay.
Our travel team booked it, but you would assume that they could book that under the pretense that
you're on business too, right?
Right. Yeah. So that's the crazy thing. Like I'm the first one. I was literally the first person off the plane because I knew that we landed late, and I knew we took off late, but I didn't know. I mean, you can make that time up in the air. We took off like 15 minutes late, and when you're talking about double-digit hour flights, like making up 15 minutes is not difficult to do. True. And so when I got off the plane, I saw the board, and I'm like, last call already. And I got to make the mad sprint for, I don't know, 3/4 mile or something getting through this airport. So, yeah, I didn't have a chance.
All right. Well, you have the conditioning and the cardio to shake off the jet lag and get ready for this massive event taking place in Colorado, where the original UFC started, where KFC just had a great show. One Championship already sold out.
Yeah.
Already sold out their event, and they're coming in with heavy artillery, maybe their greatest trilogy ever, I don't know. But come on, Adriano Moraes and DJ, those are some studs right there, mixing it up in the main event.
This is going to be a great one. Cinco de Mayo, big fight day. Denver, Colorado. This has been a long time coming for One Championship. So we're really, really excited about this show. I'm personally excited about this show because I was living in Singapore. I moved back to the U.S. to put a lot of effort into bringing the events to the U.S. And so this is the first one here, the trilogy, Adriano Moraes, Demetrious. 2 great fights between these two guys. They almost ended picturesque, they identically. Knees to the head. DJ was down. Adriano technically wasn't, but he was against the cage, and so the 2 finishing photos look almost the same. And I like this matchup as a fan. Demetrious also is. I don't know if you guys, he's teased possibly retirement after this. So as a fan, like both of Adriano, I was actually at the organization when Adriano won his title to begin with. And of course, I've trained with DJ on the mat while I was competing.
Pancration?
Yeah.
AMC, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How long were you there, by the way?
Well, I started working with them after my first Anderson Silva loss, and I was just, I had my coaching staff in Cincinnati, and I didn't want to abandon my coaching staff because we were doing a lot of the right things, but being in Cincinnati, we were also isolated from the rest of the MMA world. So I wanted to get an outside look at what I had going on in my camp. So I started from that point on. Pretty much worked with Pancration.
You left the cold for the rain.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's funny. I was just talking to Monty Cox. So I was just talking to Monty.
Extreme Fighting Championship.
Yeah, he's writing a book, and I've been talking to him the last couple of weeks, and we were talking about me going up there to AMC, and when he had recommended me training up there, I'm like, oh man, it's such a trek from Cincinnati. Like it's not like one of those places where you can just take like a nice little weekend like training trip. It's you're fully committed on that like 5.5, 6 hour flight to get up there. So So yeah, that was a big commitment. But no, I worked with DJ back in the day then, and it's been awesome to see him obviously in his career develop and become the GOAT. He's amazing, but Adriano is one of the best, champs in our organization.
For sure.
He had the most accolades before DJ had defeated him, and he also defeated DJ. So this trilogy between the two of them, I like stylistically the way that they match up. I like this. Adriano has good reach and he has great footwork. He utilized it in the first match. He actually utilized it really well in the second match. It took DJ some time to solve that puzzle. That wasn't a really easy victory for him, and I think the elbow that DJ landed in the second round really changed the tone of the fight. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah, because he was on the bottom in the guard after they hit the ground, and he cut Adriano and opened him up, and I think that kind of changed the dynamic a little bit.
Goes, I know you're chomping at the bit, but let me just get one real follow-up real quick. Yeah. What was DJ like back when you knew him? Give us an early DJ story, or just what his skill set was like and how it matured to what it is, where this guy can do everything at a high level: a knee, a punch, grappling, a takedown to armbar midair. He's literally a fascinating individual as a mixed martial artist.
Yeah, I mean, people just don't become amazing suddenly, right? This is stuff that takes time. And so when I was grappling with DJ, when I was on the top of the mountain at that time, he was amazing, and you knew that his time to shine was still to come. And granted, the size difference between the two of us it's not like we're just squaring off and doing a bunch of sparring that way. That is neither beneficial to me or him, because even if he can give me a hard way to go, it's not going to give me the look I need for whoever it is that I'm fighting anyway. But there are certain drills that you can do, and I remember this one day specifically. I had been on the mats training for some time, and we were doing guard drills, and so I'm tired. We've all been on the mat for several hours, and then so they put DJ in my guard, and it was an open guard thing, and man, it was just like he's like. It was like that line from Talladega Nights, like, man, he's like Spider Monkey, just kind of doesn't quit moving. I mean, he just chain movements and guard passing, and it was just like I could not. I was trying to get a hold of him just so I could just like squeeze him and just like close my guard just to get him to stop so I could breathe for a minute. And one of those like last rounds that we were doing, and so you just knew, like I knew at that time, like his time was coming, and of course it came.
George and I, in doing this show for so long, we come across matchups every week. Every week they're shuffling them. But this one stands out. And it stands out for one reason for me, is if you were to break it down and go through all the different scenarios of how this could end, they all kind of make sense. That's how good both fighters are. If we were to wake up and say, DJ submitted him, you'd go, yeah, that makes sense. If you woke up and you heard Moraes knocked him out, that makes sense too. There's so many things that can happen in this fight. Where do you think it falls in the landscape of greatest fight ever to be put on by one championship?
Well, I'll just comment on what you said. As part of the commentary team, my job is to come up with like keys to victory, right? Mm-hmm. So when the athletes walk out, like you'll hear me give what I think their keys to victory are. And it's quite difficult in some of these matchups, because it's like, well, it's like, well, he may not have to secure a takedown in order to win, or it's like, well, what is his key to victory? Well, it's like, well, if he wants to continue, like if Adriano wants to keep it standing, for example, use that long jab, use that footwork, use that in and out movement, right? And so there is a recipe for him to win that from a standing position. But obviously, like, he's got a lot of size on DJ. So if he wanted to pursue the takedown, then, it's like, okay, well, use that long jab, bait him in. DJ has to cover a lot of distance. And then, once he explodes forward with his movement, because we saw that in the first two fights, like you can secure the takedown. Like, so depending on what strategy you decide to implement as a camp or what your plan A, plan B is what my keys to victory are. But, I got to reduce these to like three keys to victory in essence. Mm-hmm. And so it can be, quite difficult to do. I think that, as far as like fights go, this is probably, one of the greatest fights that we've done. We've had other trilogies. I'm trying to think of what other trilogies that we've had, but I mean, even still, I think like this another one that comes to mind would be like
Angela Lee and Yang Jingnong.
Zhang Jingnan is another good one. Or even the Atomweight Grand Prix winner. When I think it was when Stamp fought Angela, she had to go through a lot to get there, and then Angela, of course, had her baby and was absent for over a year and a half or whatever it was from competition, but she was a long time out, right? And it takes a lot to bounce back from that. And I had spoken to Angela on my podcast, because as men, I don't know what it's like to give birth and then try to compete after that. I remember interviewing Bethany Hamilton and she was like talking about how she was surfing and like breastfeeding in between heats of a surfing event. And I'm just wow. It's amazing that you're able to do that because that just takes literally the baby is pulling life force out of you, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like it can't be easy for someone like Angela to give birth and then bounce back and fight the top competitor of a group of 8 hungry women. Like you're fighting the beast, right? And so that was another great matchup that the organization put on. So there's been a few, but this one definitely ranks up at the top as well.
I did want to ask you about training. We learned a lot of lessons from you guys. One lesson we learned from you in particular was one day on an interview with you, you explained to us, you said, guys, you don't know what it's like to run in the snow in Cincinnati, how much that sucks.
Yeah.
And how much being away from family sometimes. In this particular case, one thing that these guys have to deal with is altitude, right? That can kill fighters sometimes. I know DJ's been out there. He's been working as much as he can. But can you talk a little bit about how that can factor into this fight?
Yeah, and Adriano's been out there as well. Mm-hmm. So if both athletes go out there and acclimate, then it should not be a factor in essence. And I don't know which of our roster has arrived early and which have not, but it will become a factor for those who haven't arrived. I remember the first time that I traveled to Denver, the first time that I'd ever experienced altitude in my life, because Cincinnati sits at like 400 feet elevation. Obviously Denver, Mile High Stadium, we're sitting at a base level of 5,000. And once you start hiking up mountains from there, it only gets higher, right? And I remember I was like hiking up this mountain. I'm walking up the mountain and I'm out of breath. I'm like, oh man, I'm in better shape than this. Like, what the heck is wrong with me? And I had not accounted for the altitude. And then from there, the first time that I traveled to Salt Lake City, I know you guys remember Jeremy Horn. Mm-hmm. Did a lot of work with Jeremy Horn, and I was in Salt Lake, and the altitude there I think is like between 4,000 and 4,500. Not too terribly high, really, but man, you start hitting that go button and trying to grapple at like peak levels, and it can be quite difficult when everybody else is used to going with that reduced oxygen, which is why in my career there was a part of time where I actually purchased an altitude tent so that I could sleep with hypoxic air.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Well, Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards fought in Salt Lake. Mm-hmm. They definitely said they felt it.
Rockhold felt it.
Felt it against Paulo Costa, and the bare knuckle guys were there just this past weekend. Ben Rothwell, remember him?
Yep.
He was there a month. He said, I didn't want to take any chances.
Absolutely.
I needed to make sure the air quality, because if you'll recall, when Cain Velasquez fought Fabricio Verdum, Cain went 2 weeks out, and he only wanted to go 1 week out, but they insisted, and he goes, I'll go 2. Verdum was there 2 months.
Yeah.
He says, it's air quality. He goes, it's the altitude, it's the food, it's the water. So the longer you're there, the better. I'll be curious to find out who's been there longer between DJ and Adriano, and because that might make a difference.
Yeah, I don't know who arrived first, but I know they've both been on scene for quite some time. But I'll say this to that point, when I was competing, even if I fought in Vegas, for example, out here, where you have the dry desert air, I would always like to get out here as early as possible. And I didn't do it every single camp, but I would try to arrive certain days ahead of time, just so I could acclimate to this dry air. Because like if you're not used to being from here, and you probably have friends that have talked about this, like you'll wake up and like your nose will be like almost bleeding from it being so dry, and so it just takes some time for the body to acclimate to that.
It's funny you mentioned that our mom is actually, she's visiting and she's suffering nosebleeds for the exact same reason. So I do want to ask you something though. So both guys have a win over each other, right? What about the momentum? Do you feel like DJ maybe carries a little bit more momentum because he was the last one to get the victory?
I can make a case for both guys. Really, I could. That always helps. That DJ was, since he won the last one, he was able to he carries the momentum. But on the other hand, if you go back and watch the first couple rounds of the second match and look at Moraes' footwork, and I'll be talking about some of this on commentary as well. But like when I watch his footwork, like he was still controlling that range really well and giving, like it was difficult for DJ to like hone in on him. And given the height difference, like DJ has to make these bigger and bigger commitments. And that's what happened. Like he started making these bigger commitments in the first fight, and then he ended up getting caught as he came in to close, tried to close a combination, and then Adriano caught him. And so, but you see this in the second match. But however, when he finally caught Adriano the second time, he was real calculated on his movement in that time. So, it's like Adriano could go into that with the confidence, like I can make some micro adjustments here, and focus on that, and unfold that kind of game plan. Whereas DJ, on the other hand, is like you don't get to that level without not knowing how to bring some new changes to the game or whatever. So I could make an argument both ways that both of these guys could have kind of some momentum mentally in their head.
In the co-main event, we have Rodtang Jitmunyang. He's going to be fighting Edgar Tavares. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about that fight? We saw DJ against Rodtang in that hybrid fight, which was excellent. I don't know whose idea that was.
Yeah,
but that guy should get a bonus. Yeah. Where they started off with Muay Thai and MMA. Yeah. I love that matchup. DJ, I really thought he wouldn't want to mix it up as much and just get to the MMA. He wanted to mix it up. That guy is not scared of anything. Yeah. Shame he might retire, by the way. I don't know. We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
What about this co-main event?
Well, back to the DJ and the DJ Rodtang match. Like I thought the same thing when I was watching the match. Like he was just not hesitant about standing there and kind of starting to trade with him. And I'm thinking, like, what are you doing, man? Just at least get through these first 3 minutes. And if you don't finish it in the MMA round and you want to play for the second 3, okay, perhaps, but yeah, he was not shy, and that's Rodtang's not a guy you want to do that with. I mean, you guys have seen him, and he's tough too, right? I mean, Rodtang is the beautiful thing about Rodtang as a fighter is that he looks like he's just savage. He'll let you hit him in the chin, and they call me Iron Man for a reason. But then you see other matches where he's just completely untouchable, and he's very calculated, he's very precise, and very clean technique. He's not just someone who has a chin and just walks through a lot of damage. Sometimes he'll do that. And so the U.S. audience had been introduced to him a couple years ago when they were exposed to the Rodtang versus Daniel Williams matchup, which was a great matchup, but Rodtang definitely controlled that from start to finish. But Edgar Tavares is a very accomplished athlete. He's coming in from Mexico, so big Cinco de Mayo shout out on him. And listening to some of the things he says about Rodtang, he's talking about how calculated Rodtang is. Like he knows that Rodtang is tough, and he can't just, basically what he said is like Mexican fighters are known for that mentality of just coming forward and just, continuing to press and walk through the storm and take a little bit of damage, give a little bit of damage. And he said, like, I got to be more calculated than that with a guy like Rodtang because
it's precise.
Yeah. Well, not only is he precise, but he also has a chin of granite. So it's like almost like playing Russian roulette with a system like that. So, he knows he has to be a bit more calculated. And so it's going to be interesting to see what game plan he brings to it. And that's going to be a fun one to watch.
Here's the one that I think is going to steal the show. Stamp Fairtex against Elise Anderson. Elise used to train a little bit at Extreme Couture. She is really, really good on the ground. Really tricky, man.
Oh, no.
But Stamp, of course, we know is an amazing striker. At this point, I don't even like hearing or saying it's the traditional grappler versus striker. They're all pretty well-rounded now, you know what I mean? And so now I believe it's who's deficiency is stronger than the others because we know their strengths.
Yeah.
So can Stamp hang with Elise on the ground? Can Elise stand with Stamp? I get those are the questions that I like to figure out.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, obviously, this is that classic on paper striker versus grappler matchup.
I don't like hearing that.
Yeah, I know, but that's what I said. It's on paper. Listen,
what's going on over here?
You got to let me finish, man.
Okay, right.
Like this is your show, but it's rude to cut people off, right? Even though you're wearing pink, he's got pink underwear on. Though he showed me. Yes, I did see the pink underwear. So no, but the thing about Stamp is when you look at some of Stamp's matches, like the Rossoulian matchup, there was a rematch there between the two of them. And the first one she tapped and was like, I didn't tap, and that's not part of this discussion. But then she came back in the second time and ended up beating her and engaged with her on the ground and was happy to do so. Ended up on the ground with Rito Fogat. and was like controlling that matchup on the ground. So I have this sneaking suspicion actually that obviously the path of least resistance for Stamp to win this is keeping it standing, clearly, but I don't think she's going to be shy about going to the ground with Elise. Now, whether or not that's the smartest decision, we've seen Stamp just leaps and bounds improve in her grappling, but Elise is on a different level on the ground. And she does the thing about Elise is she does a good job actually fighting when she's damaged. Like I can't remember which opponent it was, but she got dropped and then was able to lock that triangle on in the first round of that match. So she's like, she's a tough competitor as well. So yeah, it's going to be interesting because I have this suspicion that Stamp is not going to shy away from the groundwork with her.
One is loaded with a lot of talented females at 115 in that area. That Grand Prix you guys had was awesome. I'm a fan of Denise. I think she could be a star. I forget how to pronounce the last name.
Zamboanga.
The Filipino young lady.
She just fought.
Oh my God, yeah. I really like her. Elise, Zhang Jinan, Angela, Stamp, really a lot of talent. So I'm really looking forward to that matchup for sure.
Yeah.
You got Roberto Soldic. Didn't get to do the debut. This is the debut coming over from KSW. You got Sage Northcutt after 4 years. Can you talk about those fights and what people should look for with those guys? Well, we're familiar with Sage, but maybe start with Roberto.
Yeah, I mean, so Soldic was the biggest free agent signing to MMA in recent years, and he came into one and technically debuted, but was fouled.
That's right,
with the groin shot. So we really, I don't know, what did we get to see, like 55 seconds of him or something like that, and he couldn't continue. And obviously that would be disappointing to him, but he comes in with high accolades, and you watch this guy, on film, he lives up to all the hype, and so it's going to be interesting matchup with him and Katastam, who is our former welterweight champ. And I like Katastam's style. It's funny, like I've always kind of thought of Katastam as a grappler somewhat, but he's really like a Muay Thai guy, and so this will be an interesting matchup because Soldic is very explosive on the feet, and it's Croatia, but even like his look and his style somewhat mimics a Mirko Cro Cop style. And, once he pulls the trigger on that leg, like it's just devastation follows typically. But Katastam has this like kind of metronome pace to himself and is capable of pulling off these victories and close quarter elbows and things of that nature. So this is going to be a fun matchup to watch because Katastam's tough too. So even if Soldic is lives up to the hype and is able to start control this match the way that most people might predict he would, I don't think Katastam's going away very quickly either. And so, he'll be there in the later rounds, and you got to be careful about that.
That's going to be a fun fight to watch. Yeah. Sage, 4 years since Cosmo Alexander finished him, broke some bones in the face.
Yeah.
Is this more of just a mental and psychological comeback versus the physical? I mean, the guy's always in shape, but 4 years. What was there? Just more follow-up surgeries that happened behind the scenes? Do you know why there was such a long delay here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what surgeries he had to have like post the initial work. I know that when I went to see Sage in the hospital just to I'd met Sage before. We weren't great friends or anything, but I just wanted to stop in and because I've been in that situation.
That's tremendous that you did that.
It's not really. I mean, I appreciate that, but it's like it's the human thing to do.
Well, a lot of fighters get in that ambulance, go, and that's it. Like everyone else is at the party or at the this or at the that. Yeah. And I've heard stories about some even just kind of getting left behind, but for an official to go in and check on them, that's tremendous.
I'm not much of a partier anyway, but with that particular shot, like. Him transitioning it over and everything, and it was a pretty devastating shot. That the injuries were fairly severe.
Cosmo was no joke, man.
Yeah, it wasn't like I don't know. He just broke an arm and had to get casted or something. And he's gonna be in and out. So he spent some time there. So I stopped in, but I don't know what follow ups he had to have. I'm not sure of the medical procedures and whatnot that followed. But with that, I would imagine some of this is a bit of a mental exercise for him. I know that, after I lost my match to Anderson Silva, I was a little gun shy in that first match back until I got hit in the face one time. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what it feels like. Even though I had sparred and been hit a couple times sparring, but still, it's just like I can remember when I was like slipping and I was over compensating on my slips, like slipping too far outside of the punch. And that's extra time. Like if you slip 3 extra inches outside the punch, it's time, and milliseconds matter in fights. And so these are big deals. So I can just remember like moving my head all over the place and finally like midway through that round, I started settling in. I think that was my Jason McDonald matchup. So yeah, some of that will be a bit of a mental exercise for him, but this is not an easy matchup. Much like the Jason McDonald matchup was not an easy matchup either. That guy's a killer. And so, he's coming back, this Mujtaba that he's competing against, like this guy he's legit as well. And so this is gonna be a fun one to watch. And Sage, obviously, like he's an amazing athlete. You see this guy, what he can do acrobatically and everything. So, if he performs the way that he can and should, and gets his head moving and puts his combinations together, this will be a good match to watch, because Mujtaba's a tough guy.
Can he dunk a basketball now, George? Do you remember we gave him that challenge? It was getting close, right?
I think so.
I think Sage would probably do better. He probably would. It would be easier for him to do like a spin kick dunk with his foot than to actually jump up and touch it with his hand. Like, I'm not kidding. Yeah. He's gonna do some sort of aerial twist dunk with his feet.
I'm gonna blow you away right now. Guess who can dunk that you would never think can dunk?
You?
I guess I set myself up for that one. Roy Nelson.
Really?
Yeah.
Roy Nelson can dunk.
You know what? I mean, in a weird way, it doesn't shock me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's only about 6 feet, but he's a pretty good athlete, and he can dunk a basketball.
Well, it's like Monty Cox was my manager, and we just talked about this story the other day. We went to play a basketball one day, and Monty, he played ball, and he's from Indiana, and so. And I knew he was a decent player, but man, we got out he hadn't picked up a ball in probably a decade or something, and he was out of shape and everything. He ended up pulling a calf that day, so it made for an even funnier story. But I think he pulled the calf after he probably, I don't know, sunk like 15 3-pointers in a row or something.
Wow.
We played a game of 2-on-2.
Got a shot, huh?
Yeah, it was like him and Jens Pulver versus me and Kerry Shaw, one of my training partners at the time. Yeah,
the meat truck or something.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember Kerry.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Here's a couple more studs on the card. You guys really, really stacked this card.
Dude,
man.
I'm telling you, man, this card.
Song, former
Ong Law,
2-division champ, fighting from Myanmar, right? Did I say that right?
Yeah, he's Myanmar.
Holy cow, that country, by the way, is going through a lot. Follow on the support that he's had for his people. He's beloved over there.
Yeah.
And RDR, I call him Rainer de Ritter. He's also fighting on the card. But can you talk about these matchups?
Yeah, no. Ong Law's fighting Fan Rong, and both these guys are. Look, I've known Ong for a long time, and he's tough. Like, he's resilient, and Fan Rong, they're both really well-rounded MMA athletes. But for me, this is about. They both have a similar skill set, and you can get into who's better at what, and. But this is really about coming into this match and just imposing your will, because like the Adriano and Demetrious Johnson match, like this is one where I could see like, oh, well, Ong Law won by knockout, or, Fan Rong won by decision or whatever. Like, I could, really see this going either way based on their skill sets. And no, the RDR matchup, Rainier versus
he's something else on the ground, man.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
Well, and this is a grappling match against Ty Rotolo, and I'm interested in watching this because one of the things I haven't seen a ton on is the fact that RDR grappled Andre Galvao, and
about that.
Yeah, that was an interesting match for us, and did a great job grappling Andre on Andre's terms, basically. And there was a lot of talk at that time. Like, RDR was like, hey, I came to your world and did your thing, so why don't you come to mine and let's do an MMA match together. But
which he's done before.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
that's a fair.
Exactly. And I'm like, I'll watch that. Like, I want to watch that as a fan. But he's grappling Ty Rotolo, which is, the Rotolo brothers, and Cade is one of our champions right now. But they both come from Andre's school. So it's Andre's protege that now RDR is grappling, and so it'll be interesting to watch how this one unfolds. That's what has me intrigued about that matchup.
So I know we're getting ready to wrap here soon, but I did want to ask you a question about your position here with One Championship. So anybody that has been to a One Championship overseas, it's a huge event. Okay,
Yeah.
Coming here to the United States, things are a little bit different, right? And I have to imagine they probably leaned on you. Rich, what do you've been a part of so many events here in the United States. What's one way we can kind of grab this audience and hold on to them? Really just make that great first impression. What do you think are some of those intangibles that American fans are going to fall in love with One Championship?
Honestly, I don't think they needed to lean on me for that, because the events that we've put on are resonating well with the U.S. audience. We have, like we've talked about Stamp and Rodtang. We have overseas athletes that are transcending cross border to the U.S. with their fan base, and we've always put on a great show. And I think that's the secret sauce. Is if you come to a One Championship event live and you see the huge LED screen and the ramp walkout and the customized computerization that we do with the entrance and the music and the graphics. And then, of course, you mix that with the fact that you're not just watching MMA, you're watching Muay Thai and kickboxing and grappling, and we sprinkle a little bit of that in there. And in the Muay Thai that you're watching, it's in 4-ounce gloves. Then you have the rule set differences.
Knees and kicks.
Yeah. The judging
over 25 or 15, right?
Yeah, and so the judging as a whole makes a big difference. The way that we score the matches, which just pushes the fighters for looking for finishes, and that's part of the reason why we have such a high finishing rate. So when you start combining all these things together, along with, and I'll say this, and this kind of like, I don't know, maybe this is just me plugging our hydration protocol. Like I'm a big fan of that, and I really believe that the hydration protocol helps these athletes output at a higher percentage than when you're sucking yourself down like I did in my career. And all these things, they little by little, they make differences. And when you watch an event like this, the people that come to First Bank to see this they're gonna be wowed, because you always say from an entertainment perspective, this is like going to a rock concert meshed with a sporting event.
For sure.
Yeah,
the hydration system, I subscribe to it too. We just had Gervonta Davis versus Ryan Garcia, and I think that hydration may have slowed down Garcia as well.
Sure.
Not to make an excuse, because that dude Davis can punch. I don't know if you saw the big boxing match.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole match. I saw
but
some
he
of
had
the
clauses
highlights
regarding hydration as well, and you could only hydrate to a certain amount. I know you guys have a different one where this is throughout the camp. The fighter has to keep a certain amount of hydration in their body so that they don't do the depletion, right?
Yeah.
The water loss.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't really do anything. I don't want to misrepresent our system. We don't do anything during the camp as much, because all the dehydration comes like in the last week, in essence, anyway. Like when I was competing, I would start water loading about 2 weeks before my weigh-in, and I would water load 3 gallons of water a day, and then you end up stripping it out during the week of the event, right? So we're there on the week of the event to test weight, to test our hydration. We test our hydration and weight before the fight, and then we also test hydration and weight after the fight to make sure there's not like significant weight gains. And so that's the way that the system is intended. So you're intended to walk around at your natural weight, which I would absolutely love, because weight cutting itself becomes its own event. Like during fight week, like cutting weight was as stressful, if not more stressful for me than the fight itself. It's like, you're just going to
could cost the card too,
right? Like
cost the fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going into most of my
Health issues.
fights. I'm going into most of my fights thinking like I'm going to win this fight anyway. But man, damn, sitting in this sauna for 2 hours off and on, like that sucks.
That's why those 205 fights you had probably were welcomed. You had a few of those, right?
Yeah,
and even a 195, I think.
Yeah, there was a couple of them. Like after I lost to Silva the second time, and then I had Travis Lutter fight at 185, and then it was clear that they weren't going to give me a rubber match because I hadn't won one. So at that point, I was like kind of a Ronin, just looking, and so I was like, well, let's move back to 205, and then they needed some catchweight fights and so I just kind of ended up fighting like bigger name people. But at 205, it was nice on the cutting side of things, except for example, when I fought Forrest, what did I cut?
At the Mandalay Bay.
Yeah, I cut like 4 pounds, and he cut like 40. So, I could remember looking at him like when we faced off at the weigh-ins, and we were about the same size. And I swear, when you rehydrate, like your spine even like lengthens or something, like the compression of the spine with the cartilage, you have more water in those things. Because I just remember looking at him in the octagon, and I was like, holy crap, like this guy just got 3 inches taller overnight. Yeah.
Hey, we brought up your name the other day, and we may have asked you this before, but just a little clarification. In the Liddell fight, before you knocked him out, if you make it to the corner, would they have stopped the fight because of the broken bone? Or do you think, were they even aware, and would you have been able to go, I'm okay? Or how bad was it, the fracture?
Well, it was the ulna, so it was the smaller bone. I always make a joke because people are like, man, you're so tough fighting with a broken arm. I'm like, well, technically, I still had one bone that wasn't broken in my arm, which was the radius, but the smaller bone in the arm was broken. It was clean break all the way through. And so when I got the this cord keeps getting stuck. When I got the X-ray done after the fight, like the doctor said, well, we can try casting this and take a risk on it just healing on its own. but the break is so bad that if it doesn't heal properly, then we're going to have like wait 6 weeks and have to re-break the arm and put a rod in. And I was like, I'll risk it. So, and fortunately it healed properly. So yeah, I mean, the break was there. I don't think they were even aware of it. Other than if you knew me, you could see me a couple times in the match, like kind of shake my hand out. Right. And like my boxing coach, Rob, knew right away. He's like, yeah, Rob and Neil both like, yeah, his arm's broken. And so when I came back, I would have fully intended on getting off that stool and just continuing to fight, because in that round, there was nothing stopping me. And that's when Joe asked me. I don't think anybody knew, so I don't think they would have known that it was broken. And besides, it wasn't like my arm was flopping around. So if you break a finger, they have no reason to stop a match over a broken finger, right? Like, so like I said, I still have one.
It came up in a fight recently, and it just reminded me of it.
Yeah, so no, I would have gotten off stool. But I will say this. There is a video on YouTube of them removing the glove or the tape from this hand 15 minutes after the fight when there is no adrenaline.
Agony.
Lord of mercy. I made a joke. The doctor's like, you might want to sit down. And I was like, because I just won, so I'm like, I'm high on adrenaline. And I was like, Doc, it's my arm, not my leg. Like, my legs are fine. I can stand here. And then so he starts cutting, and they couldn't get through the tape. They had dull scissors. And I mean, I'm like gritting this out. And my coach was standing there like trying to stabilize my bones, because like you could feel the bones were like just doing this. Yeah, it was bad. And yeah, and so anyway, long story short, I looked at the doctor. I was like, okay, let me just sit down a second, because they had to cut this thing off. So I think I would have been able to survive a minute and keep that adrenaline going and been fine for the second round. But I will say this though, there was one point where when Chuck took me down, I tried to post to get up, and my arm kind of like gave way on me, and so I had to go to the other side. And in getting up, left my nose exposed, my neck exposed, and yeah, I was like, there's a couple parts in that fight. So, who knows? I was glad to get the knockout right as that 10-second call came.
After this, I'm getting lunch. I'm going to rewatch that fight now that I know all this intel.
What are you ordering for lunch again?
Chili dogs.
Chili dogs. I thought we said something about egg whites.
Fight night 10, Johnson versus Moraes 3. It's this Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Great fights, including this main event with Demetrious Johnson and Adriano Moraes. Our guest, Rich Franklin. Rich, executive for One Championship. He'll be on the call, and thank you so much for stopping by MMA Junkie Radio. We always appreciate you.
Always good to be on this show with you guys.
All right, folks, with that, we're out. Go out and be a champion.